Okay, the next item is bone development. Basically, the bones are going to develop through a process called ossification, right? Which is the deposit basically of calcium in the bones. So there are two main types of ossification. One of them is intramembranous ossification, and the other one is in endochondral ossification. Intramembranous is called like that because it starts from a membrane. This type of ossification is going to be found basically in flat bones. Okay, so then the most important thing about it, again, is that intramembranous starts from the membrane and is basically found in flat bones. It goes through a series of processes that I think they go beyond what this class is supposed to do. And so you don't need to know these steps that you have right here. Okay, just as an FYI, there is osteoid tissue here in the mesenchyme. Okay, and in here you have calcification of the osteon. Of the osteoid tissue, and then there's an increase of periosteum and the formation of basically lacunae in here, which eventually is going to give you the spongy bone. And right here, obviously, the periosteum is going to begin to grow because of the deposition of the compact bone. And there you go, you have right here the spongy bone. Again, you don't need to know this. The most important thing about intramembranous ossification, again, is that it starts with the membrane and is basically the main form of ossification for flat bones. Okay, so in here you have again the mesenchyme, step number 1, 2, 3, 4. You don't need to know that much detail. Okay, if we keep scrolling down, the next one that we have right here is endochondral ossification. Endochondral ossification is basically used for long bones. Okay, and it starts with a cartilage. Chondral means cartilage. So then endochondral ossification is basically it starts with a cartilage and it's going to be found basically in long bones. Most of it is going to be endochondral ossification in the case of long bones. Okay, so if we're scrolling down, same way that with the flat bones, right, with intramembranous ossification, this one follows a pattern. Again, you don't need to know this, but you can see here, for example, this is number 1, right? Where the baby or the newborn is born and it has a whole bunch of cartilage in there. That's number 1. But if you look at number 6, obviously this is an adult bone and this is a long bone. So it is starting number 1 with a cartilage and you're going to end up with a long bone. So then, as I was telling you, what is the job of the endochondral? Again, it's called chondral because chondral means cartilage. So then the endochondral ossification starts with a cartilage and is going to end with a long bone, as you can see right here. Okay, so again, this obviously happens through the years. This is basically, let's say, when when babies being born, and right here is when the bone stop growing, like when we turn like 18 more or less. This is inside a month's body, and this is when we are born again. You have in here something called epiphyseal plate, which is going to help us grow in length with respect to the bones, because this part right here is cartilage. So as long as you have cartilage, more and more cartilage is going to be deposited in here, and the calcium here and here will eventually cut up with this cartilage. When the calcium from here starts cutting up with the cartilage that you have in here, then eventually all that cartilage that you have here in purple will turn into bone, and that's when we're going to stop growing. Okay, so then the main concept about endochondral ossification is that it starts with a cartilage and is going to end up with a long bone. And here you have again the steps and the processes by which we create the bone in the case of the long bone due to the endochondral ossification. Right here you have a fetal skeleton where you can see cranial bones. In this case, they are going to be flat bones. These flat bones obviously are going to originate from intramembranous ossification. And right here you have long bones that are going to start with endochondral ossification. Okay, so don't forget that. Again, we continue with that same thing. And now we are going to get to bone growth and remodeling. As I was telling you, basically the bone growth in length is going to be done through a process of bone elongation, where we have the cartilage, as I was showing you in the previous figure. You can see right here, for example, in this bone, you see this black line right here. This one right here is the metaphysis, where the cartilage is going to be found. This is obviously a kid. Why? Because it shows, you can see here all these black areas. There's going to be the metaphysis, where you have right here, and right here again, right here again, right, where you're going to have the cartilage. That's how we know that this is a very young person, again, maybe 5, 6, 7 years old. It's not an adult because adults don't have these black lines in here. Don't confuse this thin black line right here with this one, right? This is the joint. This one right here. We are talking about this black line that you have right here. So what do we use this? This is cartilage. The bone is going to be deposited in here. It's going to keep being deposited, and this area is going to keep growing. Why? Because you have cartilage in there. Again, when we turn 16, 17, that bone deposited in here will cut up with this cartilage that you have in here, and it's going to cover all this area again with the cartilage. And then at that time is when we're going to stop growing. We scroll down, you can see here, oh, you have in here the same thing that we saw in the previous figure. You have right here the metaphysis, where you have the cartilage, and up here you see the bone, and then here you see the bone. Right? Eventually, these areas will no longer have calcium, and everything is going to turn into bone. Okay, so then there's an area here of transition, basically between the bone and the cartilage, and you're going to find different zones in there. It goes from zone 1 to zone 6, and the explanation of every single zone that you have right here, you're going to find it right here. Zone of reserve cartilage, zone of cell proliferation, cell hypertrophy right here, calcification, and zone of bone deposition. Okay, obviously right here is bone deposition because right here we have cartilage. As I was saying, right here you have cartilage. So as I was saying, this calcium eventually will cut up with this area, and everything that you have right here will turn into bone. Okay, you don't need to know that much detail about it, just to know that obviously we grow in length due to the fact that we have areas of cartilage. You have an explanation in here of every single area. Again, in my exam, I don't think I'm going to ask you any questions about this. Basically, you just need to know there is a zone of transition between the bone and the cartilage, right? And when the cartilage, we're going to have cartilage until we are, I don't know, maybe 14, 15. At that time, the calcium area is going to get caught up with the cartilage, and therefore we no longer are going to grow. Okay, so if we keep scrolling down, then right here says, how does a child or adolescent grow in height? Well, basically because of the areas where we have the cartilage. So if we keep going down, well, you have in here, a person that has a problem with growth, and usually this problem is achondroplasia. This happens when the cartilage does not work properly, therefore you stop growing when you are not supposed to stop. Right? You see achondroplastic dwarfism, this one. Okay, so let's keep going. So we have the epiphyseal lane, that's where the metaphyses are, where the cartilage is. Okay, then we keep scrolling down. That's how our bones are going to grow in length. Now, bone widening and thickening. Bone widening happens based on a positional growth. Basically, in this case, what you're going to have is that the bones are going to be, or the bone is going to be growing on the outside of it, in the borders, in the diaphysis. More and more bone is going to be deposited on the outer layers of the bone, and that's how it's going to get wider. Okay, so let me see if I can find a figure right here. So we scroll up, then we can see the bone in here. So positional growth happens right here. So then the osteoblast is going to start depositing calcium here, therefore making this bone wider. Okay, once the osteoblast starts depositing here, gets trapped inside there, therefore is going to begin the bone to get wider. Now, the thickness of the bone happens because as this becomes wider and wider, the osteoclast is going to work right here, and it's going to start removing calcium from this area. More and more and more. And then obviously the osteoblasts are going to start depositing in here calcium, and the osteoclast is going to remove the calcium from here, so that the bone deposition in here with the osteoblast then eventually is going to give you a widening of this bone, and this is going to be the thickness of the bone. Different is the positional growth, where you have the bone being deposited in here just to make this bone wider. So if we scroll down again to where we were before, right here we have again bone widening, which I already told you is due based on a positional growth, right? It's going to grow only on the borders, right, because of the position of calcium by the osteoblast. Okay, and then you scroll down. The next thing that we have in here is bone remodeling. That follows the Wolff's law of bone, which basically says that, you know, the bone remodeling is going to be based on the stress that the bones are going to suffer, meaning the more, let's say, activity that your bone has, the more bone deposition is going to have, and the more remodeling, the more removal of the bone is going to have, in order to make the bone more appropriate to withstand the pressure and the forces that this bone is going to get. That's the reason why, for example, bones in your legs are going to be thicker and wider than the bones in your arms, because we are constantly walking, therefore hitting for example, the pavement, and that stress is the one that is going to stimulate more bone deposition in your bones. Not only more bone deposition, but also more bone removal from the inside to the outside, as I showed you before. This bone deposition and bone removal is going to cause that we are going to have new areas of bone constantly, because you add new ones and you remove old ones. Okay, so if we keep scrolling down, that's about it. So the main concepts in here, let me see, let's go up. Okay, right here, the bones get wider because of a positional growth. The bones grow in length because of interstitial growth, which you should have it right here. Right here. So interstitial growth, right? So bones grow in length because of interstitial growth, and bones grow wider because of a positional growth. Usually, obviously, this type of condition, for example, is because there's a problem with interstitial growth. Okay, let's go to the next item.